Hello there, very good evening and welcome to Primetime News on TV1 for the Newsfirst team. I'm Martin Satyanesan. Let's start off with a look at your headlines for this evening.
Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan arrives in Sri Lanka for a two-day visit. Announces intention to strengthen Sri Lankan connectivity to Central Asia through China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Report of the Presidential Commission probing the April 21st attack sent to the Parliamentary Library. Recommendations put forward against the former president on the charges of failure to prevent the attack. The report does not reveal who was behind the attack, says MP Harin Fernando. Venerable Alle Gunawanthathero's advice to the Foreign Minister. Vehicle import ban to continue till the end of this year. Cabinet grants approval to purchase 2,000 three-wheelers for Sri Lanka Police. Water fountains in Rambakanoya in danger due to large-scale deforestation.
Now those stories in detail. Visiting Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan engaged in bilateral discussions with his Sri Lankan counterpart Mahinda Rajapaksa today. The discussion had taken place at Temple Trees in Colombo. Pakistan Prime Minister announced the intention to strengthen Sri Lanka's connectivity to Central Asia through the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor.
The Prime Ministers then issued a joint statement to the media.
During our bilateral discussions earlier this evening, the Prime Minister Imran Khan and I agreed to work closely towards enhancing our bilateral cooperation in the economic sector and a number of other areas including trade, investments, science, technology, defense and education. We also agreed to pursue the opportunities presented within the framework of the Pakistan-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement. Our talks also focused on important regional and international issues as well as the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. We further agreed to work towards increasing activities in the tourism and aviation sectors. We continue to work together to fight terrorism, religious fundamentalism and extremism. In our talks, we agreed to continue with a common mechanism to curb illegal drug trafficking, arms smuggling and other illegal activities by sharing information through the relevant agencies.
Pakistan is part of the Belt and Road Initiative of China. CPEC is one of its flagship program, and it means connectivity. And so I've asked my delegation here to find ways and means where we can enhance our trade and connectivity, and through CPEC, connectivity right up to Central Asia for Sri Lanka. We have also discussed other areas where we can enhance our trading ties, where Sri Lanka can benefit from Pakistan's connectivity in the future right up to Central Asia. And our trading ties will also mean that the two countries will get together, will come closer together.
The bilateral discussion between the Prime Ministers of Pakistan and Sri Lanka began at around 6 p.m. today. Matters surrounding trade and investment, health and education, agriculture and science and technology, defense and tourism figured prominently during the discussion. The Ministry of Foreign Relations said that a team of officials, including Pakistani Foreign Minister Mahmood Shah Mahmood Qureshi, was also present during the discussion. Several memorandums of understanding were also signed between the two Prime Ministers following the meeting. Thank you.
Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan arrived in the country at around 4 p.m. today. He was welcomed by Sri Lankan Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa upon arrival at the Bandaranaike International Airport. A guard of honour and a gun salute was accorded to the visiting Pakistani Prime Minister this afternoon. Upon being welcomed at the airport, the Pakistani Prime Minister visited the Shangri-La Hotel in Colombo at around 5 p.m. today.
இவருடைய வருகை இலங்கை நாட்டில் பல்வேறு வகையான துறைகளில் ஒரு புது மலர்ச்சி ஏற்படும் என்பதே.
A protest was staged opposite the presidential secretariat demanding approval to bury individuals who die of COVID-19. However, a tense situation arose after the police notified the protesters that the demonstration cannot be held at the location.
We were not allowed to stage the protest at our initial location. We came here to give out a message to the President. To whom can we give out a message by protesting opposite the railway station? We are protesting at this location to bring it to the attention of the President.
The protesters continue to stage their demonstration at the agitation site opposite the presidential secretariat.
A copy of the Presidential Commission that probed the 2019 April 21st attacks was handed over to the Speaker today. During today's sessions, the Speaker announced that a copy of the report has been passed on to the Library of the Parliament.
We expected that the report on the April 21st attack will be tabled in Parliament today. A committee comprising 6 ministers has been appointed to study this report. This committee has drawn criticism from the Catholic Church. The members of this committee do not at least have O-level qualifications. Why isn't the report on the April 21st attack being tabled in Parliament? Where are the individuals who heavily condemned the attacks? The Cardinal has rejected the stance of the government and the committee appointed by them. Why isn't the report being tabled in the House?
There is another problem. Now the Cardinal has said that he rejects the 6-member committee that was appointed recently, citing that they do not have at least ordinary level qualifications. That is evident. Will you submit the report today or not? You have a huge responsibility on this matter. How long will it take to translate the document? You did not announce it earlier during the session.
Harin has no right to talk about the April 21st attack. He stayed home when around 300 individuals were killed. Harin has failed his O-level examination. Tell me whether you have passed your O-level exams. You have failed it.
O-level pass gila. O-level fail. Lanka. Mande tumara Islam ke nama nama Arin ne mein adat tiyena Harin. Arin මොකද හයන්න කියන්න බෑ. ඉගෙනගෙන තියෙන අධ්‍යාපනය. එක දෙක මගේ අධ්‍යාපනය.
I wish to table the documents portraying my educational qualifications in Parliament. I wish to request Lanka also to table similar documents in Parliament. The Parliament is facing heavy criticism on this. Recently, a woman had attacked a minister using a slipper. Who was this minister?
That is irrelevant to us. The report on the April 21st attack will be tabled. I have accepted the report. I haven't received a copy of the report yet. I expect that the copy of the report will be given to me tomorrow morning. The report received by me is currently in the library. Anyone can peruse it.
අර දේශපාලන පරිගැනීම් පිළිබඳ කොමිෂන් වාර්තාවක් ඒකටම සභාගත කරනවා.
ඉතින් හරි. ඉතින් ආයෙත් ඔබතුමා තව ප්‍රශ්නයකට යනවා. ඒකත් මට ලැබුණොත්
ඒක සභාගත කරනවා.
මට ලැබුණොත් මම ඔය ආකාරයෙන්ම ඉදිරිපත් කරනවා.
The Presidential Commission of Inquiry that probed the 2019 April 21st attacks has recommended that its report be handed over to the Attorney General by the President. This recommendation has been made, citing that it would facilitate in taking legal action against the relevant officials for failing to prevent the attacks and from discharging their duties. The report has held several officials responsible for the attacks based on evidence that was produced before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry. Former President Maithripala Sirisena, who served as Defence Minister and also as the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, has been identified among the responsible individuals. Former Police Chief Pujit Jayasundara, former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando, former Chief of National Intelligence Sisira Mendis and former State Intelligence Service Director Nilantha Jayawardena were identified among the responsible officials. The Commission has recommended the Attorney General to file cases under the Code of Criminal Procedure against former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando, former Chief of National Intelligence Sisira Mendis and former State Intelligence Service Director Nilantha Jayawardena for committing offences under the Penal Code. The report also insisted that the Defence Ministry must always be vested with the President, while calling for constitutional provisions that require the President to mandatorily appoint an acting Defence Minister during his or her absence. On the same lines, the Commission has recommended that all powers of the President relating to his capacity as Defence Minister must be vested with the acting Defence Minister, including the power to summon meetings of the National Security Council. Meanwhile, the Presidential Commission has also recommended that Sri Lanka must strengthen its ports and airports to prevent the trafficking of weapons and explosives. Another recommendation made by the Commission is to appoint a High Court dedicated to hearing cases relating to the April 21st attacks, terrorism and criminal cases, and to provide special security and training for the judges of the court. The report adds that the High Court must hear these cases daily.
Who is responsible for this? Who operated this and who funded this? This report does not consist of any information on the people who nurtured and trained Reza Haran and helped him to go to Syria. Instead of handing this report over to the Cardinal, the Catholic community and to the civil societies, this was given to 6 nobodies after taking so much time. After the displeasure expressed by Cardinal on this committee, the government panicked and submitted this to Parliament. We are not sure whether some pages of this report are missing at the moment.
Meanwhile, the committee appointed by the President to study the report on the April 21st attack and the report of the Sectoral Oversight Committee on National Security met for the first time yesterday.
There are certain recommendations made on making sure these types of tragedies never reoccur and on how to ensure unity among the public. Implementing them is the responsibility of the government. That is why we have studied everything about this and given recommendations to the President. As public representatives, it is not up to us to take action in line with the recommendations put forward against the officials who have neglected their duties. Action against them will be taken by the Attorney General.
තියෙන චෝදනාව තමයි තමන්ගේ රජයට අහිතකර දේවල් తీරන ඉවත් කරගන්න මේ කමුටු පත් කරා කියන රාවයක් යනවනේ මේ වාර්තාව පාර්ලිමේන්තු.
When we are presenting this to the 225 parliamentarians as a government, can we remove certain parts of this? We can't. We have nothing to hide here. We have no intention to protect anyone who has done any wrong.
This is absolute filth. There is nothing else to do other than laugh at this. Rohit Abegunawardena and Johnston Fernando are appointed to study deeply into this report. Can Rohit Abegunawardena study that much? He didn't even realize the importance of the East Container Terminal. Uday Gammampila is also appointed to look into this.
උදේ ගම්මන්පිල මහත්තයාවත් මේකට පත් කරලා තියෙනවලු. උදේ ගම්ම හරියට නිකන් දැන් මේක නිකන් හරියට හොරාගේ අම්මගෙන් පේන අහනවා වගේ. පාස් ගුරුහාරයෙන් පස්සේ අපි දැක්කා.
We saw how they stirred up racism after the April 21st attacks. Take a look at their behavior when we come to some of the assumptions on the direction to which this is led. By appointing this committee, they are trying to drag this matter from one committee to another. They are trying to run the show using committees.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa today reiterated that MP Ranjan Ramnayaka must be allowed to attend sessions in Parliament. A tense exchange of words occurred in Parliament on this matter today.
He spoke against the murderers and drug racketeers. Today he is forced to live in a prison filled with the biggest criminals and drug racketeers of Sri Lanka. The government must bear responsibility for the life of Ranjan Ramanayake.
The opposition leader cannot speak as he pleases. What powers does he have to do that? He cannot speak at his own will.
You must intervene and transfer him to the Velikada prison. Is the government trying to bar Ranjan Ramanayake from coming to parliament for 3 months until his parliamentary seat becomes null and void? The speaker always avoids this question. I wish to request Lohan Ratwatte to take steps to transfer him to the Velikada prison. That is all we are asking for.
The Velikada prison is the insecure one. The Angunakola Palasa prison is a more secure prison in Sri Lanka. I wish to take responsibility for his life.
Can't he come to parliament and assert his right when there are sessions? Premalal Jayasekara has been allowed to do so.
My name has been brought up frequently. I wish to remind you that I have been allowed to attend parliamentary sittings after filing an appeal. But he cannot appeal his decision once it's issued by the Supreme Court. A court order must be obtained to allow him to attend parliamentary sittings.
A team consisting of reputed president's councils have stepped in to secure the rights of Ranjan Ramanayake. Therefore, we do not require the legal advice of Premalal Jayasekara. I request the Speaker to respond to both these questions. Allow Ranjan Ramanayake to attend parliamentary sittings without resorting to dirty tricks.
I was listening to the accusations that were being made. I went out of the chamber for an important duty. I did not avoid your question, although you claimed so. I am capable of responding to that question. Remember that I did not allow Premalal Jayasekara to take oaths in parliament on the day everyone did. Although he had the right of being a parliamentarian, we did not allow him to take oaths on the first day. We didn't allow him to take oaths on the second day either. We had to summon him to parliament after obtaining legal advice. His lawyers obtained an order from the court. We decided to allow him to attend parliament only after this order.
A court order has been sent to the Parliament Secretary General on Ranjan Ramanayake.
Maintain the status quo.
We are uncertain on whether an appeal has been filed against the verdict or any other matter. There is no court superior to the Supreme Court in which an appeal can be filed.
We have signed the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. There is a separate law enacted in Parliament relating to this covenant. This legislation clearly states that an accused can appeal against any sentence. That is the country's law. You are treating both MPs differently. That is wrong. Implement the order of the appeal court. He has been given the duty of washing lavatories. Ranjan Ramanayake is a parliamentarian. We are respectfully requesting you to provide your support at a time when an appeal has been filed, just as the occasion in which you made a decision when a court verdict was issued against Premalal Jayasekara. If you don't do so, we unfortunately have to treat you as the chairman of the coordination committee of Veligama. Do not prompt us to act in such a manner. We are respecting you as a speaker.
The
arguments put forward here are the ones that must be made in court. The desired verdict cannot be obtained by putting forth those arguments here. Therefore, I wish to announce that Ranjan Ramanayake cannot be allowed in Parliament until a definite verdict is delivered by the court.
I'll cross over to a short commercial break. More news on the other side.
Do Do your online shopping now with Sambole.lk to get it home delivered or pick up on your way.
Sambole.lk.
Welcome back to the news. Today marks the second day of high-level meeting at the 46th session of the United Nations Human Rights Council held in Geneva. Sri Lankan Minister of Foreign Relations Dinesh Gunawardena addressed the ongoing 46th UN Human Rights Council session a short while ago. His address came ahead of a resolution that would be tabled against Sri Lanka by the United Nations core group at the ongoing UNHRC sessions in Geneva.
It is regrettable that despite the spirit of cooperation with the HRC and its mechanisms, elements working against Sri Lanka intend to table another country-specific resolution based on the OHCHR report. This rejected report by Sri Lanka has unjustifiably broadened its scope and mandate further, incorporating many issues of governance and matters that are essentially domestic in any self-respecting sovereign country. I leave it to the members and observers of this council to make their own judgment on whether Sri Lanka represents a situation that warrants urgent attention of this council, or if this campaign is essentially a political move that contravenes the very values and principles on which this council has been established. We urge that this resolution be rejected by the council and be brought to closure.
In the UNHRC resolution, the sponsors have expressed concerns on the mandatory cremation policy of COVID-19 deceased that goes against the practices of minorities in the country. The resolution has also stressed the importance of a comprehensive accountability process for all violations and abuses of human rights committed in Sri Lanka. It has also urged the government to review the Prevention of Terrorism Act and to ensure that any law to combat terrorism complies with human rights obligations. Further, the sponsors have encouraged the government to conduct elections for provincial councils and ensure their operations under the 13th Amendment. The discussion on the UN High Commissioner's report on Sri Lanka will be taken up on Thursday, the 25th of February at 2:30 p.m. Sri Lankan time.
Meanwhile, Minister of External Affairs Dinesh Gunawardena visited the Dharma Institute in Colombo this morning and called on Venerable Alle Gunavanchathero. The blessings of the Triple Gem are upon you to overcome this endeavour. Also, I should tell something about the government.
හැමදාම වැස්ස එනකොට වඳුරු ගෙවල් හදන්න වගේ ඒ කාලෙට ලේසි වෙන මේවට උත්තර දෙන්න. මේකට වෙනම ආයතනයක් පිළිතුරලා මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ ඉවර වෙන්නේ නැහැ. අනවශ්‍ය ප්‍රශ්න ඇති කරන්න එපා. කටවල් වහගෙන කරන වැඩ ටික හරියට කරන්න. ගැටුම් ඇති කරන්න වචන පාවිච්චි කරන්න එපා. එක එකාගේ මැච් එකේ පන්දුවක් බවට පත් කරන්න එපා කියලා ආණ්ඩුවට කියනවා.
Speaking to the media, Foreign Minister said that this resolution of the Human Rights Council is political and is not based on any human rights.
US Ambassador Lanka Teplitz visited the northern region of the country today amidst the ongoing 46th UN Human Rights Council sessions in Geneva. During her visit, the US Ambassador had taken part in the inauguration of a smart classroom at the Poonthota Mahavidyalaya and also attended an event at the University of Jaffna. Ambassador Teplitz had visited the families of disappeared on the sidelines of her visit to the northern region. Taking to her Twitter handle, the ambassador said, quote-unquote, a responsible government must respect victims' families and the recommendations of their own commissions for the sake of healing.
Meanwhile, representatives from several parties in the north held meetings with the resident Indian High Commissioner and the Deputy High Commissioner yesterday and today. Representatives from a few Tamil parties attended a discussion held at the residence of the Indian High Commissioner today.
தமிழ் மக்கள் எதிர்நோக்குகின்ற பிரச்சனைகள்
We discussed the issues faced by the Tamil people. We pointed out that the government's actions to adversely affect the living standards of the Tamil people must be stopped. We also discussed the opening of the Palali airport, recommencing naval transport between Mana and Rameshwaram, and the issues about the islands in the north. We expressed our displeasure with foreign interferences in the northern province. We also requested these actions which cause problems to the Tamil people to be avoided. We expressed our displeasure in the resolution submitted to the session in Geneva. We hope this resolution will be amended.
தொடங்கப்பட வேண்டும் என்ற கோரிக்கைகளும் முன்வைக்கப்பட்டிருக்கின்றது.
Meanwhile, the leader of the Lanka Tamil Arsakatchi party, Mave Senadiraja, met with the Deputy Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, Vinod K. Jacob, yesterday. The ITAC leader said they discussed the complete enactment of the 13th Amendment and solutions that go beyond it. He said the Tamil people are against the involvement of the Chinese against India in the northern and eastern provinces of the country.
The Joint Health Workers Union arrived at the Ministry of Health today with 11 demands, including the immediate confirmation of the lecturers and demanding to cease improper recruitments. The protesters stormed into the ministry demanding a meeting with the secretary.
The police officer is saying that they can arrange a meeting with the acting health minister and the secretary of the ministry. We are going to remain here until they arrange the meeting.
Later, the senior DIG in charge of the Western Province, Deshapandu Tendakon, arranged a discussion for the trade union representatives.
We now cross over to another short commercial break.
Do your online shopping now with Sambole.lk to get it home delivered or pick up on your way.
Sambole.lk.
Welcome back to the news. Cabinet approval has been granted to establish a committee headed by Secretary to the Treasury S.R. Artigala to expedite investments to the country.
The committee has been named the Committee of Investment Management.
We have reviewed certain recommendations submitted to us by several institutions made with the intention of receiving foreign investments. We will also consider the issues of employment and the inflow of foreign exchange. We have also created a special tax relief system with regard to the construction of factories. Accordingly, we hope to attract investors in the future. These two committees have been appointed to make recommendations on how the tax relief should be given, taking into account factors including time frames, the number of employees arriving, and the size of the institution. There is no tender process for investors. It is not about competition here. There we have to discuss the mechanism through which we receive investments.
Meanwhile, journalists queried on the consistent environmental destruction caused due to various projects in the country as well.
There is a constant battle between environment and development. This is not something that is limited to Sri Lanka. We cannot carry out development activities without harming the environment 100%. But what is needed is to strike some balance and cause minimum damage to the environment. On a global scale, safety comes first, the economy comes second, and the environment comes third. We cannot destroy the environment and carry out development or stop development because of the environment. Trading at the Colombo Stock Exchange was halted this afternoon due to the S&P SL20 index dropping over 5% from its previous close.
The stock market closed on a negative note today after its benchmark all-share price index dropped 268 basis points, a decline of 3.53% to close at 7,329. The daily turnover dropped to rupees 2.8 billion. Today's top gainers were Lakshapana Batteries, Horana Plantations, Hotel Sigiriya, Merchant Bank of Sri Lanka and Finance PLC, Singer Industries, Amanataka Full Life, Keels Foods, Muskelia Plantations, Loves Power and Eastern Merchants. The top losers were CMB Leasing, Tess Agro, LOLC Development Finance, Palm Garden Hotels, Lanka Wall Tiles, Lanka Aluminium Industries, Dipped Products, Colombo Fort Investments and Udapusal Lava Plantations.
The International Monetary Fund is considering a new allocation of its special drawing rights to IMF member countries. According to Reuters, the finance ministers of G7 countries are likely to back the new allocation.
Special drawing rights, more commonly known as SDRs, are the IMF's reserve assets that are exchangeable for dollars, euros, sterling, yen and Chinese yuan. The IMF issues SDRs to the central banks of its member countries as a reserve asset. This asset can easily be exchanged for hard currency with another central bank. The new issuance is similar to when a central bank prints money, as the new SDRs give each IMF member more reserves to draw on in proportion to their shareholding in the fund. According to Reuters, discussions are currently underway for a new SDR assurance of $500 billion. Quoting an IMF expert, Reuters reports that a $500 billion increase would deliver around $14 million in added reserves to low-income countries and $60 billion to emerging markets more broadly. According to Reuters, Sri Lanka, Pakistan and Ghana would see an increase of more than 10% relative to their existing forex reserves. Wealthy countries could also lend extra SDRs to an IMF that in turn would lend to low-income countries on easier terms than they would get from financial markets.
A discussion took place in Parliament today regarding the restriction imposed on the importation of vehicles. The vehicle prices have increased, and since there is no exact day on which they are going to lift the import ban, the vehicle market has gone to a state of uncertainty. Is there a proper plan by this government on how to lift this import ban so the situation will bounce back to normal? Can the government tell a period in which they are going to lift this import ban?
එසේ ආනයන තහනම ඉවත් කරන දිනවකවානුව රජයට ප්‍රකාශ කළ හැකිද?
අපිට පුළුවන් අවස්ථාවලදී ඒක සහන ලබා දීලා තියෙනවා.
We have provided relief whenever we can. In general, we accept that we were able to continue this import ban on new vehicles since there are vehicles within the country. I think the decision to impose the import ban on vehicles will be reviewed by the end of this year.
අන්තිම වෙනකොට විතර අපිට ඒක නැවත සලකලා බලලා අපිට තීරණයක් ගන්න පුළුවන් වේවි.
Meanwhile, the Cabinet of Ministers has approved the proposal to purchase 2,000 three-wheelers for the Sri Lanka Police.
Sri Lanka.
The proposal, which was tabled by the Minister of Public Security, Sarath Weerasekara, to purchase 2,000 three-wheelers for the police department, was approved by the Cabinet. Approval was granted to purchase 200 out of 2,000 three-wheelers in the first round under the competitive procurement system.
Let's protect Ramakanoya.
Numerous vital sources of water are under severe threat of destruction owing to mass deforestation taking place in the historic Rambakanoya zone based on cabinet approval. Two teams of Newsfirst toured the imperiled Rambakanoya zone and its surrounding areas today.
This land is not being cleared to construct a stadium or building. What has been cleared here is our heritage, our history, and more abundantly our nature. This is the woeful fate that has befallen the Ramakanoya catchment zone at present. Hundreds of acres in the area have been destroyed in a similar manner.
Cabinet consent was granted to allocate 2,750 acres of land in the historic Rambakanoya for large-scale maize cultivation. The Cabinet decision notes, lands which do not belong to forest reserves controlled by the Mahaweli Authority will be provided to investors. The Cabinet proposal forwarded by the Minister of Irrigation has proposed for the lands to be handed over to investors initially for a period of 1 year and subsequently be leased on a long-term basis depending on its success. However, established corporations had begun exposing lands for cultivations long before Cabinet approval was granted. Last December, clearing of lands in catchment areas placed in the south end of the Rambakanoya commenced amid mounting public outcry. Newsfirst's investigation in this area revealed many unpleasant results of the mass deforestation, which has taken an irreversible toll on catchment areas through which the Rambakanoya is nourished. Corporations have constructed access roads to cultivations at the expense of these invaluable sources of water.
The Mahaweli Authority constantly urges our leader to withdraw the lawsuit. Why did they not think of it when this was being cleared?
Another team toured the Gal Oyayaya in Rambakanoya.
We toured the 1,000-acre area in Ramakanoya where people used to cultivate, but was later taken over by the Department of Forest Conservation. These lands had later been taken over by the Mahaweli Authority. What did the authority do with these lands?
Mahaweli Sangwardhana Adhikariya me idam walata kumakda kale.
The area in question, situated in close proximity to Galvalayaya, which has fallen prey to mass deforestation, is named Dumana. Our correspondent revealed residents of the area had cultivated in the past. Area residents lament the Department of Forest Conservation had taken over the lands initially, and subsequently the Mahaweli Authority had laid claim to the lands, handing them over to large-scale businessmen.
The Department of Forest Conservation asked us not to cultivate in these lands. Later on, we found that the lands had been handed over to corporations by the Mahaweli Authority. We would have no regrets if the Department of Forest Conservation preserved these areas, but they lied to us and handed it over to the Mahaweli Authority. In turn, it was handed over to investors. The people have been chased away from this area.
Environmental organizations held a joint media briefing today demanding authorities to put an end to environmental destruction. When we observe the deforestation taking place in the dry zone in recent times, the forest cover has dropped to 14%, and in the wet zone it has dropped to 2.9%. This has led to forests being clustered exponentially. Deforesting protected reserves has become a policy of the government. 5,426 acres of the Polle-Badda Ramakanoya area has been cleared and separated into 15 parts to be given to 12 companies. When we were raising a voice against it, and when the law was being enacted against it, they get cabinet approval to reserve a land of 2,750 acres for corn plantation, for maize cultivation. Now we can observe that there are two sides to this. It is done illegally, and on the other hand, they are creating the legal framework through acts and amendments to conduct this in a lawful manner.
Animals like wild boar, monkeys and porcupines have been proposed to be shot dead or culled. If you are culling, you have to cull the species who has done the most amount of harm to the country. Who are the politicians? We believe it is their family members who have to be culled first.
From that, we bring to a close this edition of Primetime News on TV1. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Martin Satyanesan, along with our sign language interpreter, Brian D. Cruz. Take care and good night.